Working in the shadow of his father, Detective Ezekiel Zeke Banks and his rookie partner take charge of an investigation into grisly murders that are eerily reminiscent of the city's gruesome past. Unwittingly entrapped in a deepening mystery, Zeke finds himself at the center of the killer's morbid game. That is the synopsis for Spiral from the Book of Saw. I just saw this film Friday, and I loved it, although I will tell you, this is not a Saw movie, rather more of a spin-off. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Ethan Washburn. This is Last Hand Productions. I must put out a disclaimer right now that I am not a longtime fan of the Saw franchise. I actually just watched all 8 of them with my younger brother to catch up for this movie to be up to par. Although I realized after watching the movie that this is a soft reboot of sorts and it has nothing to do with the other movies, but I'm really glad that I watched them so that I could really compare this one to them, because there are a lot of Saw fans who are disappointed with this movie and what it had to offer. But I think it could actually be a good thing. So we'll kind of analyze it. I'll tell you some of the things that I don't like about the film first, and then I'll go into the things that make it not a Saw movie. And then, of course, I'll elaborate more on my opinions of why I think it's actually a fairly good film if you give it a chance. So now I'm going to come out and say one thing beforehand, that the trailer definitely lied to its audiences. And Hollywood often tends to do this these days. Sometimes the popular instance is Thor Ragnarok. I think that's the really first big movie that made a huge change to a trailer, which really wasn't even that big. That's where they made both of his eyes lightning instead of one of them, because they didn't want to reveal that he had lost an eye due to Hela. But in this movie, they edit the dialogue and the frames to make it look like, oh, this is going to be a big film where Samuel L. Jackson and Chris Rock team up to go hunt down a Jigsaw copycat, and the police force is corrupt, which it is, but not in the way that the trailer makes you think it will be. I will also say that Samuel L. Jackson is in this movie for probably a total of 5 to 7 minutes, and for that I was slightly disappointed because, like many others, many people are a fan of Samuel L. Jackson, and we were kind of excited to see him take on this role, in a Saw movie. It kind of seems like a weird movie for him to be in, but he kind of just shows up a little bit in the beginning to establish his character, and then, of course, to appear in the climax in the main trap of the film, which really... It was not that exciting of a trap, but then again, I had to keep telling myself, this is not John Kramer, this is not Jigsaw performing these traps or these games. This is a completely new character who I will also get into later. I wasn't a huge fan of the twist at the end. I was in the moment, but looking back on it, it's a little dumb. It's a little dumb, but that's okay. It's a Saw movie. This isn't trying to be Citizen Kane, so I'm not going to judge it super hard and whatnot. Now, I'd say the part that I'm the most angry about with this movie is one of the trailer fakeouts. That is where Chris Rock is handcuffed to a pipe right next to him, and he picks up one of the hand saws, and he looks at it like, oh crap, I gotta cut my arm off now. That whole scene is in the movie to get longtime fans into the theater, and I am not a fan of fakeouts like that. Sometimes I think they can be done really well. I can't really think of an instance right now, but I was so looking forward to seeing literally the whole movie. I was like, when is that Saw going to come? When is that Saw going to come? Because that is what everybody thinks about when they think of Saw. Instantly, your mind probably, most likely, it goes to that first trap where it really wasn't even that complicated of a trap. It's where Dr. Gordon has to cut off his leg to escape and win the game. That's what most people think about, because I think a lot of casual viewers stopped watching after the first or second movie. But myself and many others were looking forward to seeing this callback, because we really, other than just seeing the Saw a few times in other movies, we never had a big callback like this trailer was building up to. But that's the only part of this film that I hate, because he literally picks up the saw. He's like, oh crap, I gotta cut my arm off. Then he looks down at the ground again and finds a barrette or a bobby pin, whatever those things are called, a bobby pin, and he picks the lock on his handcuffs. That is the dumbest. That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in a Saw movie. I'm sorry. That nobody has ever been able to get out of a Saw trap that easily. And I'm kind of offended that they think we're that dumb. Maybe some people liked that he was able to kind of fake out of it and whatever, but I think most of us know that was just there to get us in the theater. I would have gone regardless if they didn't put that scene in there, but alas, that's my main rant of the film. Super dumb. If I had to erase one scene, it would be to erase that because it served no purpose to the overall climax of the story. But we're going to move on from that, of course. So now that I've gone through my two major problems, being that Sam Jackson is nowhere to be found and that stupid fake out, I'm going to elaborate more on why this film really is not a Saw movie. Of course it is. It's set in the same universe, but it feels more like a spin-off than anything, mainly because it does not follow the general Saw formula. And I'm going to briefly go through that because I don't have time to, of course, review all 8 movies in this video and tell you everything. You're here to hear about Spiral. I'll go through those 8 movies in a separate video coming out later this month. But basically, here is the main plot of every Saw movie. Or I should say plot structure. You open the movie and there is a trap, or you're introduced to the trap house. And then you see either some trap victims or the main characters who are going to be in the trap house for the rest of the movie. Then after the opening credits, then you usually cut to the detective / John Kramer subplot, meaning there are 2 separate stories happening at the same time in every Saw movie. You have the trap victims, and then you have John Kramer / the detectives. And the reason that I'm putting John Kramer and detectives into the same category is because the cops are really trying to find the killer throughout the movie. It's funny because they really don't go after the trap victims in every single film. Sometimes there are people going through traps, and the cops have no idea that it's going on. But anyway, so you have your detective subplot, and you have your main trap plot. Now, this film focuses more on the detective plot more than anything. This is almost like a crime thriller drama type movie, which is not the worst thing in the world. We have not seen a movie break the general Saw formula until this one. Even the last movie, Jigsaw, was pretty much another soft reboot, but it also still applied to John Kramer's story and everything like that. So you have your detective subplot and you have your main trap storyline, and the two jump back and forth. It's like oh, we look at the trap victim. Someone just died. Oh no! Then you go to the detective subplot and they go do their little police work trying to figure out who the killer is. And then at the end of every movie, the killer is revealed to be a twist villain, except for later in the series when Hoffman tends to be more of the main villain. But that's beside the point. There's still a twist villain at the end of this movie, although I didn't love it as much as some of the other ones, but that's beside the point. So that's basically the main structure for a Saw film. Now this movie opens with a trap, and you're thinking, "Oh, okay, we're in a Saw movie. This is what it's gonna be." Okay, and it's the main train trap that we all train trap. Try saying that 10 times fast. That is where the cop is stuck by the tongue or hung by the tongue, and he's standing on a stool, and he's gotta escape before the train comes and boom, gets him. And as we know in the trailer, he doesn't make it out of the trap, so we all kind of know what's happening there. Then we cut from the main title to Chris Rock undercover doing his thing, and then it kind of just stays with Chris Rock for quite a bit of time until they discover a box that's sent to the police office and whatnot. But usually these films take off super fast. Like it's boom, trap, boom, go, 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 go. And they just take off from there. There was a lot of buildup with this movie, which I bet, I'm sorry to offend any Saw viewers out there, but mindless Saw viewers who just want to see gruesome traps and people get mutilated, they had to wait quite a bit of time to get that. And I think that might have been a reason why some people didn't like this movie, because it followed more of a Hollywood-type detective story than anything, which personally I enjoyed because I'm not a huge fan of gore, or, I mean, I don't mind it, but I don't love it like some people do. I don't know how people can just go crazy for this stuff, but that's beside the point, of course. I enjoyed kind of getting to know Chris Rock's character because we're with him for the entire movie, and they do a really good job of making him likable. One of the great things that this movie brings to the table is that there is quite a bit of humor, which has never before been seen in a Saw movie. Saw movies are really dirty and gross looking, and of course they're gory, but editing wise, they're not the best to look at. They're kind of just grimy looking. I know I'm using a lot of synonyms here for dirty, but that's kind of how they look. There's not an ounce of joy at all in any of these movies. I don't think I ever found myself being happy while watching them. But we get to, in this movie, we have Detective Zeke, He's a funny guy, but he's got problems with the Force, blah this, blah that. His character is pretty in-depth compared to a lot of other characters that are in this series. And I kind of like that. There was a few times where I was laughing with my brother and my other buddy. We were laughing so hard because some of the jokes were actually pretty good, and it brought humor it kind of brought some comic relief. Now, I may be mistaken. I'm not a diehard fan, of course, but I cannot recall one joke or 1 ounce of anything funny in any of the 8 Saw films, except for maybe some bad acting or weird facial expression or something like that. Not one. So that kind of brings a new tone to everything, which I appreciate, because some of those films are really hard to watch, especially if you're starting them out for the first time. I just remember sitting there like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Why did I do this to myself? And then by the end, you get kind of numb to it, and you're fine. But I appreciated that they were trying to incorporate new viewers to watch this movie. They didn't make it exclusively just for Saw fans, because that's not going to sell tickets, of course. But, this movie really is not that gory at all. So in that sense, it doesn't follow the Saw formula either. I think the most gory trap of this film was probably the trap where the cop has his fingers stuck in the Chinese finger traps, essentially, and he pulls his fingers off. That was the only trap that really made me think of any other Saw trap in the film. There's one where the police officer lady, she, gets waterboarded with hot wax, and it's kind of melty, but there's really not much gore to it, which, again, I'm not complaining about, but it doesn't really match what other Saw movies do. And the final trap with Samuel L. Jackson is also fairly tame. Essentially, there's just a bunch of IV tubes dripping blood out of him. He's just basically being bled to death. And that really isn't too crazy from whatever we've seen before. But I will defend the film and say the reason that these traps aren't as crazy as other ones is because this is not a direct disciple of John Kramer. It's not John Kramer himself. This is a copycat who evidently grew up in the same city, and kind of, I'm sure everybody in the city kind of knows what has been happening throughout the years. So he's just been kind of studying up on it. Probably when he was a hormonal teenager, he just got on the internet on those Saw forums or whatever from Saw 8 and did his thing and kind of planned his revenge out from there, which I'll get into later on in the review, of course. Another reason that this film does not really fit much into the Saw story as a whole is because for 8 movies, it was the John Kramer show. And even though John Kramer died in movie 3, which is crazy because there's so many movies in the series, even though after he died, his disciples took over the traps, it all tied back to him. The story was always about him. He was always the favorite part about these movies for most people. He's nowhere to be seen. He's referenced a couple times. You see a picture hanging up on the crime scene wall, but that's about it. And again, I don't really have a problem with that because we've seen a lot of John Kramer, and I love Tobin Bell. I love his performance. He is definitely one of the most iconic horror movie killers that I know of, at least. But it's kind of nice to have something new and something fresh brought to the table, because in every other Saw movie, you figure out, oh, this killer was all along a friend of John, and he helped him build this trap. But then there's this other friend who helped before him, and it kind of if they did it again, I would have been very turned off from the film, to be honest. So this is a complete new thing. This is again why I call it a spinoff. This really has nothing to do with the main storyline. It almost feels as if this story was not a Saw film at all, but then it really wasn't doing well. There was some plot holes I couldn't fill in, so then the main studio decided, well, let's just make this a Saw film and kind of fill in the gaps here, and then we could get the Saw fan base in here, we can get other people who know of the fan base, bring them in. It's almost like what J.J. Abrams has done with the Cloverfield series, or the franchise rather, over the past decade or so. I know that 10 Cloverfield Lane and the Cloverfield Paradox were not originally written for the Cloverfield franchise. They were unfinished scripts that were adopted into the main Cloverfield storyline, which really just ends up being the last 5 or 10 minutes of the film, or in the Cloverfield Paradox's case, they reference the name Cloverfield a couple times, and then there's a big monster at the end. Like, that's pretty much the only way they tie into the main movie. But that's almost how it feels here, is like, well, maybe Chris Rock just wanted to write a sort of detective story, and then he was like, oh wait, let's just make this a Saw film, and then it worked out. So I still like it a lot. Many people, I've seen IGN's review, I've seen a lot of other people who are really pooping on this film, saying it's a disappointment. And I bet it is for longtime fans, but it does offer something new to the table, so I still advise you to go watch it. It's pretty awesome. So with all that being said, I know I just went through a lot. I told you some things I didn't like about it and why this really isn't a Saw movie. But I'm going to forget all that for now and go more in depth as to what the story has to offer. First, I'm going to get into Chris Rock's character. I really like his performance in this movie, and I know that some scenes feel very overdramatic with him in it, but we got to remember, this is a Saw movie. There are so many overdramatic performances throughout this franchise that we would feel weird if there wasn't one. You can tell that he's really into it, and when you can tell an actor is into their project, that can almost sell it for me. I'm not a huge critic. Now, another reason I like his character is because since it is fleshed out so much, we really grow with him, and we tend to care for him more than we do other protagonists of the series. The point of Chris Rock's character is really to show how good a cop can be, and then compare him to the rest of his force, who are pretty much just douchebags, who are crooked, they kill people in cold blood. They're bad cops. And that's really a big theme of the movie, is good versus evil, and how fine that line can be sometimes. I really wish we could have seen Zeke interact more with his father, because it would have really made the ending of the film that much better. If they had a relationship that was built up more throughout the film, besides just being shown a little bit here and there in flashbacks, then it would have been a lot more of a heart-hitting ending. Like, I was already feeling it because I was like, oh my gosh, his dad's in a trap. But it would have been so much better for a lot of other people, and myself included, in fact, if there had been more of an established relationship beforehand. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if there had been more scenes of these two doing some cop solving together and all that good stuff, then it would have made the stakes a lot higher at the end of the movie, because in the beginning, they have good banter. You can tell that they have kind of a struggling relationship. They like each other, but they don't really see each other very much, and they're kind of distant. I think that if you spent some time in the movie, you show their distance in the beginning, and then they do some cop solving together, which brings them closer to each other, and then in the end of the film, it's like, oh man, the thing that brought us together is the thing that's going to take you away from me. I think that would have been really cool. I think it would have been a lot better for the movie, but, you can only use your actors as much as they can be on set. So if Sam Jackson has something else to do, obviously, you can't really fix that. Now, since I've covered the two main characters of the series, because being honest, the rest of the cops honestly don't even matter. Maybe they come back in the next movie, because this movie does set up a sequel. Perhaps they meet their demises in that movie. We'll see. But there really isn't much worth in talking about them, because they kind of serve no purpose except to annoy Chris Rock throughout the movie. So now I'm going to move on to the killer, who ends up being this guy. Yeah, it ends up being Zeke's partner, which was a good twist for me at first. Although I will say, I called it way at the beginning of the movie. There's this scene where Zeke and William, who's Zeke's partner, they go to pay respects to the widow of the first trap victim, because Zeke used to work with him. They were good friends, so he wants to pay his condolences to his wife. And they go there, and Zeke's like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, that your husband died. You're gonna be okay." And then she invites him in the home, and William just in the background says, "Hi, I'm William." That's literally what he does. And I turned to my friend and I said, "He's the killer." Sure enough, he ended up being the killer. So I'm going to give myself credit for that one. I genuinely thought he was going to be the killer. So then at the very end of the movie, it's revealed that William was actually the killer the whole time. And the reason being is Samuel L. Jackson's character, Marcus, who was commissioner of the department at one point, started this Article 8, which was a street cleanup order to clean up the streets in whatever means necessary, even if they were unethical. So a lot of innocent people died, but in conclusion, the city became safer. It's kind of like a win-lose type situation. And William's father had some evidence that could have been leaked to the public or something. They don't really go into it too much, but Zeke's ex-partner, who eventually becomes a trap victim, shoots William's father out of cold blood, and they cover it up, saying that, oh, he pulled a gun on me, this and that. And Zeke does the good thing by exposing his partner, but there's no justice for his father. So that's why William spends his whole life learning how to make saw traps, and then he learns how to become a cop, and he says he works really hard to be put on the same squad and become his partner. It's a little confusing. It's a little crazy. You can't really explain it in words. So go watch the movie. It'll make more sense, although it's kind of dumb. It's just slightly dumb, but it's fun. It's definitely a Saw twist where it kind of hints at it a little bit through the movie, so that it can go back in flashbacks and say, well, we told you that it was going to be this guy. You just had to be paying attention. He's the Jigsaw copycat, which is completely fine with me. I really don't know who else it could have been in the film. In the final trap, Sam Jackson is hanging from the ceiling while his blood slowly drips out of his body through those tubes. Chris Rock has the choice to free him and join William with the noble cause of killing bad cops, or let him drip to death. All the blood goes out of his body. Now, while all this is going on, the police force was notified to come investigate the trap scene. So Zeke decides to attack William and also shoot the target to free his father, while the cops are cutting through the door that has been locked. And while they're cutting the door, it actually cuts a wire that raises the arm of Sam Jackson, who has a shotgun manually attached to his hand. So when the shotgun is raised at the cops absolutely unload on Samuel L. Jackson's character, and he dies. Chris Rock is just screaming there like, oh my gosh, my dad is being shot to death. It's not his fault. But it's protocol. They did it. He was going to kill the cops. So it's a crazy last scene. It's shot really well. I very much enjoyed it. I remember all of us in the theater were just kind of screaming no, because it got us all. Whether you like this movie or not, the ending's pretty phenomenal. The cinematography is really well because it casts him as a silhouette, and it really actually reflects a previous clue that William had left for Zeke before in the film, where it shows a video of a puppet pig on strings raising up a gun. So it was great foreshadowing, and it was very sad. I was heartbroken, but I think we all saw it coming, of course. There's no reason why Sam Jackson would be in a Saw movie and not die in a Saw trap. I don't think he'd waste his time otherwise. So that was that. But obviously, the best part of the ending was that sweet, sweet Saw finale music. You know what I'm talking about if you've seen any Saw movie. I don't know if I can play it because I might get flagged, but it's the so good. Literally, I told myself before entering that movie, I will be happy with this film regardless, as long as they play that song. It's in every single movie. It would have been awful if they decided to leave it out. So I'm really glad that they the rest of the soundtrack is actually kind of poopy. I don't like it at all, but phenomenal ending. Probably one of my favorites of the whole series, actually. Now, there are a few final things that I want to talk about that I forgot to mention earlier as things that kind of bother me a little bit, but also are okay. First off, Billy the Puppet, I'm pretty sure that's his name. He's the little puppet with the spirals, where the name actually comes from. I'll put a picture up. That's what it looks like. He has the spirals on his cheeks. He's been in every single movie, but he was not in this one, sadly. And the reason being, this has nothing to do with John Kramer, of course. It's kind of more symbolic that the puppet isn't in it if John Kramer has nothing to do with it. So instead of having Billy the Puppet, explain the traps or send clues or whatever the killer may decide what to do, we have the pig element expanded on a lot more. So whenever the videos for the trap victims play, it is just the pig mask kind of talking to him. Which, by the way, the voice for the pig in this movie, it's not even scary. It's hilarious because it sounds like Spoderman, the derpy Spider-Man character, had a baby with Billy the Puppet, and then that's what the voice would sound like. It's like, I want to play a game. I am Spoderman. I teach you math. Let's play a game. That's what it sounds like. I couldn't take it. That's literally, I couldn't take it seriously. It was hilarious, but whatever it may be, it was creepy. It was fine. And instead of having a child being the puppet, of course, there was also a pig puppet to reflect the mask, and that's where the foreshadowing was I talked about. It was still creepy. I enjoyed it, but I did miss seeing Billy the Puppet because he's been such an iconic face for the whole series. One thing that I want to elaborate a little more on is how lame the traps were in this movie. Being that John Kramer didn't draw up the plans for them, this was all Williams' show, so his traps are a little bit lamer, which is fine. But I think that when it's said and done, a couple months from now, people are not going to be able to remember what the traps were in this movie, probably except for the final one or the train one at the beginning. I think anything in the middle, I think there were 3 in the middle, they're kind of forgettable. Now, the broken glass bottle shooter, that was kind of cool. I actually forgot to even mention that one earlier just because it was a little more forgettable, because it wasn't as gory or grotesque or whatever word you want to use as the other. Like, I can probably name at least one trap from every other movie just because there's always that big, juicy one. But there really wasn't one here that stood out completely. So I think that they'll be very forgettable, and I would say that none of these traps would fall into like a top 10 list of the whole series or anything like that. They're kind of just generic, but again, if you look at it more in the sense of, hey, this isn't really a John Kramer show, this is completely different, you can kind of forgive it a bit. I forgive it. I know a lot of other people are not going to, though. This movie was more like watching a Criminal Minds episode than watching Saw, because Saw is known for its crazy risks that it takes with gore and with torture and all that stuff. It really wasn't that bad. So I'd say anybody over the age of 15 can probably go and see this movie if they are somewhat comfortable or mature with this kind of stuff. Now, I know I've actually kind of ripped on this movie more than I've wanted to throughout this review, so I do want to talk about some of the good things that I really do like about this film. That being, it is shot beautifully, and I've said it a couple times for a few different scenes, but the whole movie really does look great. Compare it to the other movies, which of course came out, I guess, 20 years ago, almost now. They are gross looking, and I know they're supposed to. That's a stylistic choice, but the first Saws are edited so choppy, and there's that like speed cut where they it kind of emulates torture or pain or suffering, but I hate it. It makes me want to throw up every time. It really doesn't look good. I know it's a stylistic choice, but when I was rewatching these movies last week, I was like, well, not rewatching, I was watching them for the first time. I said, man, this is terrible. I don't know if I can get through it, but I got used to the kind of tone of it. This movie is very cinematic. Like I said, it follows more of the Hollywood blockbuster form than anything, which is good because it kind of brings a new light to the series. It updates everything to make it look cleaner. I like it very, very much. If you take out a few different shots in the movie, you have a good poster. You have a completely separate movie, honestly, from what people think this will be. There's this scene where Zeke is walking to investigate something. I'm going to be honest, I can't remember what it is, but he is a silhouette, and the light is shining through, and it shows this grotesque scenery very well shot. I really appreciate things like that. And since this director is the same director that did 2 through 4, I believe, kind of nice to see how the times change and how he's changed as a filmmaker. He's kind of matured a bit, I assume, throughout his movie making. So I really have a great appreciation for that. Now, also, I do really want to talk about the special effects when they were needed. They do look pretty good. There are some Saw movies, notably Saw 3D, the final chapter, and I think Saw 4 or 5 has some pretty bad, CGI blood effects that look terrible, and you're just like, oh gosh, this kind of took me out of that moment. But this movie, the effects look fine. I'd say the most grotesque scene of the entire movie is where the cop's fingers get pulled off, and it's pretty gross. It's pretty nasty looking, but it's all right. It's the effects look really good, is what I'm trying to say. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's nothing that you can tell is really fake. CGI really has progressed so much than it was back in the early 2000s or mid 2000s or whatever it may be. It's really stepped up. As obviously they have to for for Marvel movies and whatever the case may be. So those are pretty much my main thoughts of the film itself. Obviously, I would love to go through every single scene and analyze it, but everyone seems to want a numbered review these days, which I'm strongly against. Movies cannot be rated in number form. You can't rate something out of 10. There are too many limiting factors that make you not able to rate a film that way. But I'm going to do it anyway because I know everybody wants to see that. But to be fair, I will rate this movie separately. One rating being that of a Saw movie and that of just a regular Hollywood blockbuster movie. Now, taking everything into account that I have stated in this video and by researching other opinions of more prominent Saw fans, I will go ahead and give this movie a 4 out of 10 for a Saw movie. Now, that may seem very critical because I've talked about how much I love this movie, but after seeing how many people were really disappointed with this film because it didn't follow the original formula, it really didn't tie into the others very well, and the traps weren't that good in other people's opinions, and in mine, I think that this movie, as a Saw film, will be forgotten if it's not expanded on in future sequels. So I'll give it a 4 because the cop plot is really good in my opinion, but the traps are really not there. There's no trap house, there's no adventure in the trap area, which everybody thinks of instantly when thinking of a Saw film. I know this film, for many longtime fans, is super disappointing, and I know that they are deterring people from watching it. Do not do this. If you are a longtime Saw fan, for the 50 people who are going to see this video, and you were skeptical of watching it just because of somebody else's review, you're stupid. Go and watch it, see it for yourself, and see if you're going to like it. I guarantee that if you go in there with a good mindset, knowing that, hey, I pretty much spoiled everything for you, so you know what to expect, go watch it. It's really good. I love it, and I think you can at least have a little bit of fun watching it. Take a friend with you, go have a nice night, go get scared. It's fun. Now, as a regular Hollywood blockbuster, I'm having quite a hard time deciding whether to give this movie a 6 or a 7, because I really want to give it a 7. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and I can overlook a lot of dumb stuff when I watch a film, but after really thinking about what I had just watched and analyzing it more on paper, I'm kind of leaning more towards a 6 just because of some of the plot holes, and there were just some dumb things in this movie I didn't like. Mainly that Saw fake out from the trailer. That really kind of hurt my feelings, and it hurt so many other feelings of many fans. But I'm just going to go ahead and give it a 6.5 because I can't decide. I love this movie. I don't care what anybody else says. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to remember the good experience of binging all 8 and then going and seeing it the next day. So that's that. We're going to give it a 6 out of 5. This is my small channel. Only 50 people are going to watch this video, so who cares? So there you have it. Spiral from the Book of Saw. Go watch it with your friends. Don't overthink it. Just have a good time. Don't listen to the critics, okay? The critics are going to deter you from enjoying your life. So just go have fun. Go support AMC. Literally, 50 of you that are watching this video, go buy a ticket. Go early in the day. They're cheaper. Go support AMC, please. Please keep them open. I need my A-list pass, so please go watch it if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching my video today. I know it has been a long time since I put out a video. It's been 4 months. I really wanted to set up the studio, and I bought a camera. I bought the equipment to make these videos look better than I had them before. I don't want people to have to watch trailer footage over and over and over again like that one Wonder Woman video. So please consider dropping a like, get more content like this, or to see my future videos. In fact, if you want to see my future videos, you should just go ahead and subscribe now because I'm committed. I'm going to do this now. So please support a small channel. Just subscribe. It would be a big help to me. This is kind of a side passion I have. I love talking about movies, and I can't seem to find the right people to talk to them about. So please, if you want to drop me some comments about my video quality, I know that this looks a little cramped. I'm going to fix that later. So please tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what I did right. Talk about this film with me. I'll respond to you in the comments, of course, because only 50 of you at most are going to watch this right now. So I'd love to start a discussion. And be good people. Have a good day. Thanks so much.